Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Utah FilmPod. It is officially summer. At least it is in my mind. I don't know. I think maybe it's someday in June, right? But as of the movie that I just saw, summer's here.
Oh yeah.
That's the way that I would put it. We are definitely school-wise, movie-wise, kind of temperature-wise. It's not really that warm yet, but I'm not going to complain about that.
It's been come and go a lot. And Josh, I gotta say, something that I've loved with this summer season, because of your free time and everything and all your adventures, I have loved your photography posts so much. No, they've been like beautiful photos and just like all the stories with them and everything. But whether it's like someone you're visiting, some place you're going, like it's been really fun to follow. So
nice. Well, I look forward to adding to the collection once I recover from my current disease. Which did I tell you guys? I told Mark.
Oh no, you told me.
I'm getting over COVID. So hopefully, if that explains why my voice sounds a little more husky than usual. No, it's been the watered down 2022 version of COVID, but annoying enough that I'm kind of ready to get out there and take pictures or see movies or just enjoy the rest of the world. So, but let's talk some news. Danny, what do you got for us?
Well, I mean, biggest thing that's going around is just, to continue on with the battle of the streaming services. We got Stranger Things Season 4 and Kenobi released on the same day, I believe, right?
That was a heck of a day.
Yeah. No, and it was so funny, too, because it felt so intentional because everyone was like, I have to make this choice of what do I see first? And, do I binge it? Do I just take things in little bits, And it's been kind of interesting hearing the varied responses, not just in reactions, but also in the viewing habits. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I think it's been very, very fascinating.
Well, I mean, this is a discussion that we're going to have at more length in a very soon to come episode.
Absolutely.
But just because you've mentioned that, the first thing that I would point out is like in terms of pacing and how much do I watch at one time and all this. Stranger Things, like every single episode is over an hour long, and most of them are closer to an hour and a half. Like, because I'm still working my way through. I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but when I first sat down, I thought, I'm probably going to watch. I'm going to tell myself that I'm going to watch 2. I'm really probably going to wind up watching 3 or 4, and then I look at the running times, and it's oh crap, maybe I will just watch 2, and I'll be up really late doing it.
I wondered about that because we started the first one last night, and I saw that it was about an hour 18 or so, and I thought, they must have an extended pilot, not really a pilot, but a season opener.
Right.
And then, but I didn't know they were all like that. I guess might as well just watch Lord of the Rings or the Godfather trilogy or something if you've got the time.
It's just kind of an even trade-off, right? You can either watch The Godfather or Stranger Things. I mean, they're pretty equivalent. Right?
Oh yeah.
But that I'm looking forward to talking about both of those really, because there's plenty to address, but not just in terms of lengthy content, but just lots of thoughts and things to say. So we'll look forward to that. Now. And honestly, that's one of the reasons I feel like it's summer is like when that stuff hit, it just kind of felt like, the fire hose was turned on in my face and off we go with the summer. Sadly, I'm going to have to bring up a negative bit of news, which is also something that I want to talk about more extensively in another episode because it is certainly worthy. I don't know if you guys have paid attention or what you follow online or any kind of thing like that, but a couple of beloved businesses that are movie related have run into trouble. I assume that it's trouble that's causing this. The Motorview Drive-In, Coleman's Motorview up in Ogden, is no longer going to be showing movies, which just breaks my heart. Yeah, and I think last I saw on their Facebook page, they're still going to be doing swap meet and stuff for right now, but they have no plans to do movies at the moment. And then this one isn't a Utah film establishment per se, but it's close enough. The Spud Drive-In up in Driggs, Idaho, kind of southeastern Idaho, not too far from Rexburg. They are not permanently closed, but they will not be doing movies this year because a windstorm blew their screen over.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so when they went to evaluate how much it was going to cost to repair them and to get it back up, they just realized we're not going to be able to pull it off in this year. So their Facebook page says that they're going to be back in 2023, and hopefully that's the case because that's actually a bucket list item of mine. I still haven't been able to go see a drive-in movie up in Driggs yet, but I've always wanted to go see something at the Spud. And I don't know. I don't know if you guys kind of have the same affection or the same background, but I always will have a soft spot for drive-in movies, and I don't want to see them go away. This breaks my heart.
That's hard. I like them too.
It felt like they were making a comeback with COVID because it's like, you're all in your car. And,
right.
And
right.
so that was something that was like coming back around. But I'm with you because that's what summer film season, like that's what I think of too, is like, a couple months after a release, you go see the big blockbuster in a drive-in, and that makes me so sad.
Yeah, no, that's why I say like we're gonna do, once we take care of our special soundtrack episode, which we have gotten like on the verge of recording. We
almost did.
Yeah, we were just too tired that night to do 2 episodes.
Yeah.
We're unless you guys object, I really, really would love to do a drive-in themed episode because that is just a special. Happy to say that the one that I spent the most of my childhood attending, the Redwood Drive-In, is still going strong, and so that gives me some hope and encouragement. But we can come back to this topic with a little more time and preparation. But I did think it was newsworthy to mention the struggles of a couple of beloved establishments. So we give you our best and hope that Spud comes back, and if there's some way for Motorview to turn it around, that would be a nice thing to have in Ogden still.
I always worry about that with the drive-in theaters because they already were struggling for years. Yeah. Even before the movie theater, even before streaming, became a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've got some pretty good memories too. Yeah, that would be fun to do, sort of a drive-in or maybe like non-traditional but old-fashioned movie viewing, episode because, I think I mentioned in an earlier podcast, I have a good memory of seeing Batman with my uncle and his Datsun at a drive-in theater, the 1989 version. It was quite fun. It was like such a cool treat to be able to go with him, and seen a lot of interesting movies and drive-ins. 1408. I don't know if you remember that John Cusack horror film. Interesting.
Now, they didn't have do they have a drive-in out towards Vernal?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, because you're bragging it up, like the one that I frequented as a youth. And then I'm thinking, like, the one we had
don't be so mean and jealous.
The one we had in Vernal, I loved. And, like, especially, like, it was during those, like, teenage days where it's, like, we were about to get cars, or we got cars of our own, and, just, like, going out and going to see a movie, and, like, maybe cuddling under a blanket or something like that. Like, teenage stuff, right? And so I have like so many fond memories of that sort of phase, right? And no, that one burned down, or at least they're kind of like shack sort of thing. And again, it was another one of those situations where it wasn't worth the cost to fix it up. So that one made me very, very sad.
I'll bet. I imagine the margins on those places have to be so tight,
right.
With the property values and the taxes and all that. So
and that was another thing is like, selling the land was just so profitable. I think there's a Walmart there now or something like that. Maybe a Lowe's. Like they made bank.
That's so tragic.
I know.
Oh, sorry guys. I didn't mean to put such a negative.
And I was excited for this episode too. So thanks a lot.
All right, maybe we should move on then, since definitely have some more upbeat things to talk about. We really only have one movie to talk about, and there really is only one movie to talk about right now, and one dude who's connected to that movie that we're going to talk about as well. But let's jump in head first and talk about the signature movie of the summer so far. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if anything's going to upend it. But let's talk about Top Gun Maverick. All three of us have seen it. What did you guys think?
I love this movie. I thought it was it's such a perfect summer movie. I mean, it's big and fast, but also it's very drama oriented. It's a dramatic. Mm-hmm. I'd almost call it an action drama.
Yeah.
And we talk about fan service, and I noticed that when the phrase fan service is used, it's often negative. It's a negative connotation. And I feel like there's some fan service in this movie, especially in the first third or so, and it's not negative at all. Like it's like good nostalgia, It's
right,
and it's almost like, hey, I actually heard an interview with the director Joseph Kosinski, who's worked with Tom Cruise before in Oblivion, and he's like, we wanted to let the fans know that we like this movie. We like the original movie too, and we are not shying away from that, and we're welcoming them. It's like he said something like, we want to wrap our arms around the fans, and that's why they open it the way they did, where it's almost an exact shot for shot remake at the beginning.
Yes.
It makes sense. So now, Danny, you said that you just rewatched the original in preparation. So did the opening of Maverick
it was
jump out to you?
Yeah, like what Mark said, it was like shot for shot, and then there were just a lot of beats where it's like, oh, here he does something reckless. Oh, he's getting in trouble, but things are turning around. It was very much beat for beat, kind of the same. But I like how, Mark, you said that with fan service, because I feel like it's what the word actually means, like service. It's serving the fans. It's respectful. It's very giving. It's very thoughtful. And so it never, ever felt cheap. It felt just, that kind of like warm hug of returning. And I didn't even feel nostalgia. Even though I saw it super recently, the original, And I don't necessarily care for it. I don't have all these emotions tied to it, but made me feel so happy. I loved that so much. And once we kind of explain the story a little more and we go into more details, I just think they made so many good choices with this movie. And I'm with you, Josh. I don't think anything's going to top this one as far as blockbusters.
It's going to be a challenge.
It's so good. It's so good.
Well, and Danny, I love the way that you pointed out that it made you happy, because I think that was one of the big takeaways, right?
Yeah.
Because we knew this was going to be over the top action. It's going to be Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise, and we, I think we knew going in that there was going to be a good deal of nostalgia and stuff. And if it had just been about the nostalgia, if it had just been about the fan service, it would have been okay.
Yeah.
It would have been fine. But the reason this is such a good movie is because it's a good movie, and because it backs up that fan service with the joy of just kind of Mark said, it's a pure summer action escapist hero movie.
Yeah.
But like you said, Danny, we should probably give a little bit of background on it before we get too carried away. The plot picks up the story of the original film. It's coming out in 2022, was supposed to come out in 2020, but based on the ages of certain characters and the way things are lined up, I'm guessing that this has taken place around 2010, because for reasons that'll come clear in a second. So we have Pete Maverick Mitchell, who is Tom Cruise's character, and he was the hotshot pilot of the first movie back in the mid 80s. And when we meet him now, he is in middle-aged, and he's still a captain, and he's a test pilot because he's just so rebellious that he can't progress, right? He can't get advancement. He can't really move on with his career. He's just kind of confined himself to being, to living up to his call sign, right? To being Maverick. And so he's in this condition, or in this situation, when the Navy comes up with this bombing mission that kind of did a wink description of it in my review of it. You know, it's an impossible mission, right? They've got this impossible bombing run they're supposed to go on, which was, I guess, my lame attempt to do some kind of a Tom Cruise pun. But anyway, so they have like this this impossible mission that they have to pull off, and they have to train a group of pilots to do this. And of course, there's nobody better suited to train them than Tom Cruise, Pete Mitchell, the legend of Maverick. And so he gets called back to the Top Gun training facility, because that's the name of the training facility, right? Top Gun refers to this school in, I think it was the San Diego area, where these crack pilots are trained. And so the basic idea of this story is that he has to train these pilots and prepare them for this mission. Of course, things are more complicated than that, because one of the pilots who is a candidate is the son of Goose, his former. What do you call the guy who rides it? He's not your co-pilot. If he's riding with you in the F-16, the F-14.
Was it like a navigator?
I don't even know. I'm not even sure. But he died flying with Maverick in the first movie. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched the first movie. So his son, played by Miles Teller, is one of these up-and-coming hotshot pilots, and he has some understandably tense relations with Maverick. And so that's a factor. You've got a former love interest played by Jennifer Connelly. John Hamm kind of steps into some kind of a weird combination of like the Tom Skerritt role from the first one, where he's like because he's not really a mentor like Tom Skerritt's character was. He's more of kind of like the obligatory. He's almost more like the Strickland guy from Back to the Future. He's just like, and I don't even remember his Top Gun character name, but he's the bald principal from Back to the Future who also plays effectively the same character in Top Gun, who is just there to agitate.
Right. I'm just thinking if he had taken Maverick and been all like, "You're a slacker, and you'll always be a slacker." He could have totally said that. It would have fit.
I just had given him a late slip.
I think he's an interesting character because I feel like his role in the movie. Because, I mean, if you notice, and I don't think this is really a big spoiler, but like, it's like the first movie. The villain, the enemy nation or whatever, is never really named. Like, there's no name. There's no, and Top Gun is almost like overtly apolitical. They're not trying to be controversial at all. That's part of being the summer blockbuster thing.
It's very pro-America, but not anti-anybody else.
Right, exactly. And so I feel like with that character, like, okay, he's kind of supposed to be the villain, and we're supposed to like, he's there to keep Maverick from doing Maverick-y things, like that seems to be his whole goal, right? And so we're not really supposed to like him. I love John Hamm, so I didn't really even dislike him that much in the movie, but he can never even like have a huge smile. Like he's always kind of got this scowl, and he has to be telling, and he has a lot of great lines, but it's always about like stopping Maverick from stepping out of line anyway.
And I think, and this is one of the things that I think makes the movie so effective, because you almost get the sense that, because as they're training for this mission, they lay it out very clearly, and they kind of have to imitate what they're going to do overseas in the local, San Diego area. And it's almost like the mission is the bad guy, because it is so, I keep coming back to these same terms, mission and impossible, which seems corny, but like that's just the way I'm describing it. And it's so well constructed and well executed, the way that they describe what they're going to have to do and how they're going to handle it, and how it's going to be so difficult to to train for it, and let alone succeed. So I almost feel like that's the bad guy, right? Because like you say, Mark, they don't really say that it's nation ABC that is out there, and we don't know why they're a threat. There's just some target out there that I think that it might be like it's some kind of a
uranium or something.
Yeah, like a uranium mine or something like that. But all that stuff is very, they give you just enough to know that it's a threat, but not enough to be distracted from the idea that, these half dozen pilots have to go do, this, then they have to do this, then they have to do this, and they have a 1 in 1,000 shot of succeeding.
Well, that's kind of that drama that Mark was talking about, is like, when you do have that, when the, I don't know, physical threat isn't really focused on. It's all about the internal struggles. It's all about them, meeting this task that is just insurmountable, right? And so, I mean, that's really, when it comes to, I'm glad you pointed out John Hamm, because, like, I think each of the characters were just handled so well, where, like, that's where it was engaging. That's where, the real meat of the story was.
Yeah. No, it was surprisingly intense.
Yeah.
I expected it to be good, right? Because I'd already heard, vibes that, this is going to be really good. And, I did not expect it to be as intense and well executed as it was. And one of the things that jumped out to me, because as you can imagine, I mean, there's a lot of flight footage and, stunt work and camera work and stuff. And absolutely. I'm just watching this movie thinking, how did they do this?
Right.
I mean, because even down to the film grain,
right?
It looks like an older movie.
It's so good.
Like it looks like it was filmed a year after the original Top Gun.
It's so pretty.
Just it doesn't there is no obvious CGI work where you're just kind of, well, I'm accepting this because I'm watching a movie in 2022, therefore it will have CGI. You just watch this and it feels, I mean, I don't want timeless to be kind of overstating things, but in the sense that it doesn't feel rooted in a particular year, namely ours.
Yeah.
It felt timeless. It really did feel like it felt real.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing because so the filming of it, one thing that I learned, and this is what I learned from the interview with the director. So he and Bruckheimer went to Paris to talk with Tom Cruise about this idea. Basically, Jerry Bruckheimer, who's the producer of the original as well, he sent a script to Joseph Kosinski, and then he said, yeah, like I want to do this, and they said, obviously they have to go talk to Tom Cruise, and basically he said they flew all the way to Paris. They got a half hour of his time. They met in like a hotel, like a conference room or a hotel room somewhere. And they basically said, look, I think they might have even showed him on YouTube, but they said, there are Navy fighter pilots who have these GoPro cameras and they get this amazing footage. And you can pull it up for free right now on YouTube. And if he goes, this is what we're going to do, there's no point in making this movie. There's no point. We have to go above and beyond this. And of course, Tom Cruise, who is like always taking risks, always taking things to the next level. He's so passionate. He's very interested. And what they end up doing, I don't think they talked about this at the time, but what they end up doing is they put 6 IMAX cameras in the cockpit of a Navy fighter, jet, basically. Yeah. And what they did is they have each actor paired with a naval aviator, with a pilot, basically, who's dressed the same as the actor. And they have cameras in front of them and behind them, and they have over-the-shoulder cameras. So sometimes they're showing over-the-shoulder cameras of the actual pilot, but you think it's the actor.
Yeah.
And what they do is they go up and they actually go up and they fly super fast and they fly as low as they can to get the mountains in the background. And the director couldn't direct him while he's up there. There's no live feed. He basically just tells them, like, you go up there, you turn on the camera, it's almost like you call the action and you just do this stuff. And they only have usually about 2 hours a day of this, and then they come back down and they review the footage. They put it on a big screen and they say, hey, do it again and do this, or we can, next time do this. And they go through and sort of rehearse everything. And he said they got about 800 hours of footage. Usually in a day, like what they would get is a few seconds of usable footage. Yeah. And it was a ton of work. And the Navy, that's part of the reason these movies are so like pro-American, almost pro-military, is like that's part of the deal, is that the Navy lets these filmmakers use these jets and give them some, I don't want to say like insider info, but like, they kind of have script approval, which is a little odd, but they also get the benefit of the best pilots in the world and the fastest jets and the real thing, like authentic.
Now wait a minute. So is that why our gas prices are really so high? Is it because they used it all up shooting Top Gun 2 years ago?
Yeah, that's probably. They used all this expensive fuel shooting it. And, I don't know.
I do have to argue with you a little bit with the whole, like, being so pro-Navy just for, and I know you're not saying this, but I just kind of to make a point against it a little bit where, I don't think it was just pro-USA, pro-Navy, because that's who they were working with. I mean, I think it would have been so disrespectful to the characters that wouldn't have made a good story if they weren't pro all these things. So I have to make that point. But oh my goodness, that is incredible. I have been wondering how on earth did they make this, and that totally makes sense. And like I knew it'd have to be something just insane, because like oh my goodness, it does look so good, and it's gonna age so well. And I talk about like how the worth of a movie is in the rewatchability, and this is a movie that I will come back to because it's going to age well, and it's good and it's enjoyable, and something that's crazy that it was that much footage, because something that I was so impressed by that I hadn't seen in really any action movie, especially not with planes before, is that it feels very choreographed in a way where as a viewer I can understand, I can follow where each plane is and what they're seeing and what's going on. Because most of the time in an action movie, it's kind of just a mess. And it's like, oh, yeah, they're going to be fighting. There's going to be this. But it's so... And maybe this is because, like, the mission is so laid out that you know what it's going to look like.
I'm sure that's... Yeah. No, and that might be part of it.
Yeah, it's so integral to the plot, and it makes it so easy to follow, but it's so smart. But it requires all those hours of footage to make sure that you're stitching together the right shots so it has that continuity, right?
Yeah.
That's insane.
I agree.
Absolutely insane. Wow.
One of my pet peeves in action sequences is when they're confusing.
Yeah.
And because sometimes a plot or a subplot or a character's motivation can be confusing enough, but when you see an action sequence, which should be like sort of like the basis level of storytelling of like, okay, how does this contribute to the story? What's going to happen between these two characters that's going to lead them to the next thing? And then you can't even, like, you're trying to watch the screen and you don't even know what just happened, unless that's maybe the point of that particular one. That always bugs me, and I never got the feeling in this movie that they did that. They always made sure that you knew where you were in the air, who was flying what. One thing that helped, because like one of my complaints, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Black Hawk Down.
No.
But it's so hard to tell those people apart, those pilots and soldiers. Like, a lot of times you're watching the movie and you're like, wait, is that Josh Hartnett or is that another guy? And you can't tell who's who. And in this movie, they have their call names, their call signs on their helmets, so you know who it is, right? And they have
and they're clearly defined characters too.
Right.
Not all dozen of them, not all 12 of them, but the main characters. This isn't fantastic depth, but you know who they are.
Yeah.
You know who they are, right?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Is that as much as people are going to get the feels from the nostalgia with this movie, and I'm going to talk about that more in a second. It's the quality of this thing that really is making it succeed.
Absolutely.
Because you could take the nostalgic cues and references out, and this would still be a fantastic action movie. A very, I would almost say, kind of a throwback, kind of classic hero action movie in certain ways. But it's that execution that you're talking about. It's Danny, the way that they are, describing things and preparing the viewer in a way that they can follow things and are not just being lost in a confusing mess of, on-screen mayhem. Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And yet, the action is not my favorite part. My favorite part of this movie is a scene between two guys, one of whom is not even talking. And I don't know how much I can go into because, it is and is not a spoiler. Like, this isn't going to be a spoiler to anybody who's kind of been paying attention. But I'm still going to be kind of vague, and you guys will know exactly what I'm talking about.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Absolutely beautiful, and I totally agree with you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There is an interaction between two primary characters that would be kind of cool in the context of the movie by itself.
Yeah.
But because of what it connects to in our honest to goodness real life, just makes it awesome. Just such a a great moment.
That's the thing, is like, you can tell that so much thought was put into this movie, where it's like they knew what they would have to achieve to make this movie so good as a sequel, as an action film, as a drama, with all the people who are involved. Like, there's just so much thought, but especially with the emotional beats, with each of the characters, it was, but that scene in particular. I don't know anyone who wasn't tearing up in the theater, and we had a packed theater, but like...
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough.
But it was good.
And what's interesting though, and I know now that I'm thinking out loud and talking about this, I'm wondering if there was some intent behind this. But in order to appreciate that scene, you kind of have to have seen a documentary that came out last year that wasn't originally intended to come out before the movie, because the movie's been on hold for 2 years. I almost wonder if they've been holding on to the movie for a couple of years for that reason. And I mean, not that exclusively, obviously. I mean, I think COVID had something to do with it, right? But the order of events has lined up in such a way that this really has kind of turned into a special thing, kind of outside and kind of beyond the movie itself. So we're speaking in such circles and generalities here that anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, it'll be very clear.
I also like how Miles Teller's look is perfect for being the son of Anthony Edwards.
Such a good cast call. Oh my gosh.
He's got the mustache and he's tanned and he's playing the piano and singing, and it's just so, like, they did such a great job.
My gosh. Well, even his, like, profile, because he kind of has, like, a little bit of a flat face, a lot like Goose. Like, I mean, honestly, that was kind of perfect. And Miles Teller is just, I think he's really, really, really good. Kind of underappreciated, I think. And this role, he just, the way he delivered it, but also just looking the part. So good.
He has one of the most devastatingly just tragic scenes I've ever seen in any movie. And have you ever seen Only the Brave?
Yes.
That's the same director, Joseph Kosinski. So he got to work with him again.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. He did that, and Jennifer Connelly's in that as well. So he got to work with her again.
No, I interviewed both of them for that movie.
Because
I wasn't going to bring it up, but if it's now that you mentioned that Kosinski directed it, I did phone interviews in connection with that movie, which is about a group of wildland firefighters based on a true story. Really, really incredible, movie. But I interviewed Jennifer Connelly and Miles Teller as part of the, the little telephone junket that they were doing. But I didn't realize that Kosinski had directed that one as well. I guess I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
But that makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
It does.
It was funny because the interview I was listening to him earlier was about how he has some form of flight or flying machines somehow in all of his movies. And he didn't realize that, but he's like, I was building pretty complex remote control airplanes in high school. He's always been interested in that. So this was the ultimate. And he had to be ready. Like, this couldn't be his first movie, obviously. He had to be, like, prepared and do a bunch of other movies.
Yeah.
Right, he did Tron Legacy. He did Oblivion.
Okay.
He did there's some flight stuff in Only the I want to say Only the Lonely, Only the Brave.
Only the Brave.
And so, but yeah.
Well, let's see, and that's why I alluded earlier to the idea that I think that the timing. I guess it's okay if we kind of segue a little bit into some of the negatives, because it wasn't a perfect movie.
Excuse you?
How dare you?
Our own version of the Twitter mob. Because I'm like adding this up in my head and I'm thinking, okay, so the first movie is like 1986 and Goose's son is obviously alive before Goose dies. So that means that he would have had to have been born in the mid-'80s, which means that, because that's now like, 35, 36, 37 years ago. Pretty sure Miles Teller's character isn't pushing 40. So, because I don't think he's necessarily a brand new pilot, but there's no way he's over 30.
So here's the thing. Because there's this whole plot about how his career was pushed back, and like Miles Teller is getting older, so I thought that was actually totally fine.
Right.
So
4 years, not
well,
15.
And also you wonder too, like, does it ever say what year the movie is supposed to take place?
I don't think
right.
so.
No, it doesn't.
Something like 30 years later.
Yeah.
Because of like with the delays and everything, now we're technically at 36, but I think it's supposed to be 33. In fact, it was supposed to come out in 2019. That was the initial release date, but then they had to reshoot a bunch of really complex scenes, and they pushed it to 2020, and then COVID pushed it 2 years. So I kind of wonder if he. I mean, it still is a long time. I mean, it was going to be 30-something years.
I'm still right.
I don't know. Wait, how old is Rooster in the original in Top Gun? Do you remember? Like 2 or 1?
Oh, no.
He's got it because he's like an infant.
No.
Oh, that's right. You're right. He's singing. He's a little boy. He's like 5 or 6.
Yeah,
or
no,
7.
like
he's
popped
right.
up on the piano in the flashback and everything. Like.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, not that, again, because the movie presents itself in a very timeless way, it doesn't matter. But, well, and maybe this kind of is a way of leading around to the point that we can all agree on, which is that Tom Cruise, it's amazing that he's doing what he is doing. I mean, I looked it up before we recorded. In about a month, the dude's going to turn 60.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Cruise is going to be 60 years old.
Crazy.
And... good for him. That's really.
He's amazing. I wonder how much longer he can really do a lot of physical action stuff, physical work, stunt work. Because he is pushing 60
forever.
I mean, I guess while we're sort of correcting or doubting the other's version of events, I was understanding that. I think you said earlier when you were describing the plot at the very beginning how he had been passed over for promotion, so he was continuing to fly. He wasn't really advancing in rank, in the Navy. I had understood that was like a deliberate
he
choice
wasn't passed.
by him.
Yeah, that's true.
No,
he was avoiding.
Yeah.
Right. He just loved flying so much. Yeah. That's like he just wants to do it his whole life.
Yep.
So.
Which honestly, okay, so this actually brings me to their really smart choice with Maverick's character, because like I feel like in a lot of sequels, especially now, you forget about all the character development that happened beforehand. And so you come into this movie and like it's definitely Maverick doing Maverick things. We kind of mentioned that, right? And you got to love that stuff. But I love how the first thing that gets him, like in trouble was him doing something for the sake of a team, which that was his lesson from the first one. And so I love how they showed like, he's just a person, right? He's flawed, right? But, like, he's had this growth, and he is this hero that we can still like. We're just going to make him better. So, like, because he wasn't wanting to progress, there's kind of this fear of, like, not doing things himself and, not being able to teach. Like, it goes against his character a little bit, but through the course of this story, he's getting over that. He's letting go is one of the themes, right? And I thought that was brilliant. And that's probably why this story is so strong and why it serves as such a great sequel that's so respectful and enjoyable, right? And that was probably one of the elements to the story side of things that was just, I don't know, one of the best things they did.
One thing I love about his character, and maybe this does reflect the maturity beyond the 1986 version of Maverick, is that he never does anything just either to be a rebel, like rebel just to be a rebel, or for his own glory, like to show how cool he is.
Exactly.
It's all about showing like the team what they really can accomplish when they don't believe, or showing, for example, the higher ups, the bigwigs, like that this can be done. And of course, he has to do it in a way that's independent and unorthodox, and maybe breaks a couple rules. I mean, there are at least 3 different scenes in this movie where he like flies something either he's not supposed to, or he's doing something in there that he's not supposed to without getting into too much detail, or he does it in a way that he was told not to. Yet it serves like the greater good. So you can justify it.
Well, it shows that like his greatest weakness is really his greatest strength, right? And that's what makes him such a lovable protagonist, that classic hero, right? So.
Right. No, and I guess that's why I say, like, the more I reflect on it, it feels like, yes, it's a really good movie. Yes, it's a really good action movie, but it feels like a throwback classic, even kind of a classic 80s action movie, which it's a sequel to, right? So it makes sense that it would be, and I can't explain that fully without without giving away some substantial things we don't want to give away here. But there are some things that happen in that movie that really just kind of echo of some of the classic kind of hero stories of past efforts.
I like to point out, appropriateness of a movie, right? And it's like, there's definitely that action. It feels very intense at times, and there's your PG-13 language. But something else that I really loved is that this movie probably has the greatest, like, quote, love scene I've ever seen. And let me explain it, because, like, as a girl...
No, I know. I know exactly what you're saying.
It is the gosh dang most romantic thing I have ever seen. Because, so, like, I mean, it's kind of implied, with love interest, like, oh, they're kind of getting close and everything. But, like, their love scene is all just, like, them pretty modest and, like, just talking. And, like, as a girl, that is the sexiest thing you can see. Is like Tom Cruise just having a deep conversation with his love interest. So and that's the thing. Like it's a very safe kind of movie, and it was funny watching it because you kind of think about the first one. And it's like, oh, do we look away now? And
oh yeah, yeah.
It was very clean in that regard, and I loved it.
No, I noticed that absolutely. I was more inclined to wonder if it was more of kind of a behind the scenes thing, because I see Jennifer Connelly and it's like, oh yeah, because she's married to Paul Bettany, like, and that's they're this awesome couple and stuff, and maybe they didn't want to do anything on screen and be respectful and all that, but the sum total of it was that that was like, did they even kiss?
I
don't know if they even kiss in this movie.
They do kiss, but I almost agree, Danny. Like it seemed to be almost a deliberate choice to be like how it's apolitical. It almost felt asexual, and I'm not complaining, right? Like, because I don't care to see all that stuff, but they really,
as a girl,
for a PG-13 movie.
As a girl, you're going to find that so attractive, though. Like, that's not asexual at all. That is like a true strong romance, And then I really
such an opposite to the first one.
What you normally see in movies today. Yeah, it was so softened and just...
No, in fact, you guys will laugh. I put this in my review and then I took it out before I posted because I figured I would bring it up in our discussion. But like, one of my lasting memories of the first movie is so my first year of junior jazz youth basketball was in the 5th grade. And at the end of our season, we had a team party and we watched Top Gun because it was on video. And so I have like this distinct memory of being like 10 years old sitting in, because it was like one of my teammates, his dad was the coach or something. And so I remember sitting in their basement, curled up on the, with pillows and, carpet and stuff, watching that scene surrounded by a bunch of my junior jazz teammates, and just thinking, well, this is weird, like, because it's not. I mean, it's absolutely a PG-13 love scene, but it's awkward enough that it's like,
I think.
Well, that's
PG.
weird.
Well, I mean, this was before. PG? This was when PG.
You're right. You're right. I think it was a PG.
But yeah, it was
PG.
Yeah, but it was definitely after PG-13, but I think you're right. I think it was a straight up PG movie.
Because it was 84. 84 is when they started.
Yeah, right.
What led to the creation of PG-13 was the Temple of Doom. Right. And this movie was
But it
86.
hadn't, like, figured itself out yet. So, like, I mean, it definitely would have been a PG-13.
So they hadn't quite decided whether Kelly McGillis licking Tom Cruise's chest in silhouette qualified for a more harsh rating.
Oh gosh. But you know what? This is another thing where it's like being intentional, right? Where it's like, they looked at the sequel and they're like, here are the things that were really good about it. And then here are the things that maybe weren't as good about it. But they didn't overcorrect either, because they totally, and I was really worried because there was like this one kind of plot element sort of thing where it's like, oh, this is going to be the whole feminist thing where it's like, these men of the old times, they were, so sexist and offensive and everything. But it was more just kind of as a playful joke than anything. But I was worried because, a lot of the times it's that overcorrection of like, men suck. And it's like, I didn't want to watch that. And they didn't do that. And I was relieved. But I really, really liked how they kind of corrected a little bit on that front. But yeah.
Okay. Well, good. So, all right. So any negatives?
Nope.
Anybody want to?
I don't know if this is a negative, but it seems this is very interesting to me. And again, I'm trying not to do any kind of spoiler, but
For sure.
Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Think of the mission that they have to do in that movie and what is in this movie, and it's really, really very similar. It almost seems deliberate to me how close.
So you're saying they ripped off Star Wars?
I think they did. Yeah, I think they did, which is fine. It's one of the best movies ever made, but it's very close. And now another thing.
That's funny.
I mean, maybe that's a more common military, mission than you think of. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's just something that they do a lot.
Well, they had to make it
Star Wars.
Well, to make it impossible, they had to make it very precise and very complicated, right? So, I guess that's kind of why it has that feel, right?
One thing I liked about it, it's really hard for me to say things I didn't like about it, but I'll think of something.
Because there's nothing wrong with this movie, Josh.
Another thing I liked about it is you know how it's getting harder and harder to distinguish, maybe like Maverick and Ethan Hunt. I mean, it really it. So several times in this movie, when they're talking about what they have to do, what their ultimate goal is, they're showing these, this footage of what's supposed to happen. And it reminded me almost like of an Ocean's 11 type movie.
Yeah.
Or a Mission Impossible movie. Where it's like we as the viewer get to see what's going to happen or what we hope is going to happen. And then it's narrated. Usually there's a voiceover narrating it. They did that in this movie too. And again, it helped. I mean, it helped us to kind of orient ourselves.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is where we got to go.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I don't know. I think what's interesting about Tom Cruise is that he has demonstrated that he is capable of being a very distinctive and unique actor, but he's also a movie star, and so most of the time he's Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
So it's not that Pete Mitchell is Ethan Hunt or that Ethan Hunt is Pete Mitchell. It's that they're both Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and I have no complaints about that. I mean, he is.
No, and I overwhelmingly. I mean, if it's not obvious already, I really enjoyed this movie and can't wait to see it again, and we'll probably add it to the collection, But no, I do have to say, and this might even turn into kind of a backhanded compliment, but I did feel like there were certain plot points that were predictable. Like there were some things that I really did see coming.
Yeah.
But they did it so well that they get away with it. And so and that's why I say it's kind of like I was not. I think we're almost to a place, or at least I'm to a place where I kind of feel like I want to be surprised by the plot, or I want to see something different. And the fact that things kind of fell into place the way that you would kind of expect made it predictable, but also kind of classic because they did it so well.
Yeah.
I was kind of bummed that they didn't bring Meg Ryan back and that they didn't bring any of the female characters back from the movie, even though they brought some of the male characters.
Yeah.
I had heard that it was like, why do we have Jennifer Connelly in this movie and not any of the other female leads? And I thought it was just a random character that they just made up for this movie. But apparently she's mentioned in the first movie as the daughter of an admiral. Yeah, I think she's even mentioned by name, like Penny Benjamin. So there's like a weird sort of throwaway mention in the first movie, and somehow they sort of maybe just shoehorned her in to be the main love interest in the sequel, 30 some odd years later.
Yeah, but I think you can still make the same point. But yeah, I mean, there are some little things here and there that I wasn't crazy about. Like I said, a little bit with predictability, but even with that, they pulled it off. This is such a good, and I guess this is what is really kind of crazy for me is that even now, Thor: Love and Thunder is far and away the movie I'm most excited to see, but it's got its work cut out for it because Maverick is that good.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we have some time. A little bit of time, and I thought we could maybe kind of reflect on the work of Mr. Cruise, just because. No, I mean I'm watching this movie, and I mean obviously he looks great, especially for a guy on the verge of 60, he looks incredible, and and you realize how young he was, because it's not necessarily that he's old now, because he doesn't look like an old man in this movie.
No.
But then you go back, and maybe Danny, you can speak to this better than us because you've seen it the most recently, but he is a child in that first movie.
For sure.
I mean, what was his first? I'm not sure if it was his first
That was
first movie.
kind of his big breakout role, though.
Well, no, yeah, this one was. But no, what I was going to refer to was The Outsiders, because I just read. I read Rob Lowe's autobiography, and he talks a lot about the production of The Outsiders, which was kind of like that first big movie for all those guys in the early 80s. That was like 82.
Oh, yeah.
And he talks about meeting Tom Cruise, and it's hilarious because he describes him as exactly the guy that we've known for the last 40 years. Just kind of like this over-the-top, high adrenaline, aggressive, go-getter, get out of his way, And it's like, this guy has been doing it for decades, and Mark, you kind of alluded to this before, and I've wondered the same thing. Like, is he going to go out on a movie set somewhere? Like he's just going to try one stunt too many. Is that,
You wonder about that.
That's going to be the way.
Filming had to be shut down in one of the Mission Impossible movies when he...
the last one that came out, the Fallout.
Oh, was it in Fallout? Okay.
It was, so there's like one or two that are about to come out, but the last one that was in theaters,
that was Fallout. That was number 6.
Yeah, he broke his ankle jumping between buildings.
Yeah. I mean, and then they had to like shut down filming for a few weeks, right? I think it was a huge deal.
Yeah,
that man's gonna die on set.
Even though he walked it off in the scene, you can see him hobble off. So do you guys have a favorite Tom Cruise movie, or is it kind of one of those things where he's kind of like he really kind of is Tom Cruise every time, and so they're interchangeable?
Well, there are a lot where there's kind of a little bit of variety. I think he can play characters a little bit, right? So like in preparation for this, I finally got around to seeing War of the Worlds. I was trying to find Minority Report, and I couldn't.
Oh wow, I just barely watched that too.
Really? Okay, yeah. So like,
yes. I've seen it before, but I rewatched it.
Yeah, but that one is a different kind of character. Jerry Maguire is kind of that same way. I really liked him in Far and Away.
Yeah.
Like, I think there are some where like he does play a little bit of a different kind of character, or he'll play spins on a kind of character. So like,
yeah.
Oh, I wanted to talk about this one later because this one's one of my very top ones. But Edge of Tomorrow, where he plays a guy who's like, he's like, I'm not a military guy. He's like the face for
that's
it, right?
That's a very against type.
But it works well because he's doing this repeat thing where he becomes this like really action hero kind of dude. But it's interesting how he kind of plays on it where it's like he had to grow into that. He had to become that Tom Cruise that we recognize, right? So, I don't know. He does a good job with that kind of stuff. One of my all-time favorites, this is just a family favorite, is Night and Day, where, again, playing on that character, where he's playing that stereotypical, action spy dude, right? But it's the movie is from, kind of that female lead stereotypes point of view. And I think that movie's hilarious. And he plays it so well. Like, he understands the kind of symbol he is, and it makes that movie so fun.
I'll try to be concise with this because I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but bringing this up and talking about kind of who he is, this is such a perfect example. So I only saw Night and Day, I want to say once. It's him and Cameron Diaz. It's kind of like a comic, action comedy, right?
And it's the first time I saw Paul Dano, too. I just want to throw that out.
Was he in that?
He was
okay,
precious.
Gosh, it's been a while.
So precious in that one.
Well, so Diaz and Cruz go on as part of their publicity tour. They appeared together on Top Gear. This old, it was on BBC for a long time. They might still be doing it, but the original hosts have all kind of moved on. And they were on this segment that they would do in the show every time where they would put a star in what they called a reasonably priced car. And so they would have to get in this car and they would have to take a lap on their track as fast as possible. And the idea was, we're going to just stick you all in a Toyota Corolla and see who can take this crap car the fastest. And of course, Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise. If you want to watch the episode, I won't give away like his time or whether he, because all the celebrities compete against each other, right? And so they have this board where they have everybody's times. But Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise takes the last corner and gets the car up on like 2 wheels and almost rolls it.
Oh my God.
Because he's so aggressive and so competitive. And so that's what I remember best about
So
Night and Day
funny.
was that they wound up going on. Because if you haven't, I mean, my gosh, you want to talk about potential tangents. Top Gear is one of the greatest shows ever. but his appearance on it, along and because usually they just do one guest at a time, one celebrity guest. But because they were together, it was both him and Cameron Diaz, which was just a fun episode. But anyway,
Dang.
I'll end that tangent and bring it back. Mark, what are your favorite? Because I was actually going to ask you. I haven't seen this, but when we're talking about kind of his more I don't know, celebrated acting performances, did he get nominated for Born on the 4th of July? I never saw the movie, but I want to say he got nominated for it, right?
Yes, I was going to mention that. I've seen that movie. It's really harsh, pretty violent. I mean, very.
He's a Vietnam vet, right?
War movie. Yeah, he plays it's a true story where he plays a guy who's, and it's interesting because it's called Born on the 4th of July, and Tom Cruise is actually born on July 3rd. He's born on the 4th of July Eve, and he plays this guy that goes off to war, and he wants to do right. He wants to serve his country, and then he has an experience in the war that kind of changes him, and then by the time he comes home from the war, he completely becomes like an anti-war, I don't know, like kind of an anti-war crusader. And he's paralyzed, and he grows out his hair and has just doesn't look much like Tom Cruise, like any Tom Cruise we've ever seen from the 80s. And the movie is from 1989. And he was nominated for Best Actor. He lost out to Daniel Day-Lewis, who's also basically a quadriplegic.
Oh, was that My Left Foot?
He can only move one foot. Yeah, My Left Foot.
Oh my goodness, that's right.
So, I mean, supposedly one of the great, physical acting performances of all time.
Oh no, it's great, yeah.
And Tom Cruise, and I haven't seen My Left Foot, but Tom Cruise did end up getting nominated a couple more times, including for Magnolia, which I love.
And Jerry Maguire, of course.
But yeah, he was nominated. In fact,
did he get a nomination for Jerry Maguire?
He did. In fact, he was supposed. I mean, he was sort of a front runner, but he ended up losing. I think it was to Jeffrey Rush, but I can't remember for sure. But it was if that was the year that Shine came out, it would have been Jeffrey Rush, who played a pianist in that movie. But yeah, Born on the 4th of July is great. I mean, that's part of the Oliver Stone trilogy when he did Platoon, which won Best Picture. Born on the 4th of July won Best Director, and then I think Heaven and Earth was soon after that. But yeah, that was really, I remember even my dad talking to me, and I was pretty young, and my dad had talked about how Tom Cruise was a really good actor. It wasn't just that he was kind of a new, a movie star, but like one of the best actors that we have after he saw that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about some others? I have a lot of favorites.
Do you have? Because honestly, as I'm listening to you guys, I'm having a tough time picking out a favorite. I mean, I have a lot of favorite Tom Cruise movies, but I'm kind of asking myself, okay, well, so when someone says Tom Cruise, what is the first movie that springs to mind, right? Because honestly, something like Top Gun could be a candidate like that, even though that's not my favorite Tom Cruise movie. It might be as easy as anything else to use as a defining Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah,
it's hard. The first thing that comes to mind, I mean, I love Minority Report so much that usually comes to mind when I think great Tom Cruise movies. And maybe it's more of a Spielberg, but it's so good, and he's really good in it.
That's a good movie.
That's one that I love. I rewatched that, and I probably think of Mission Impossible, maybe just because there's so many of them now. It's like he's been making them for over 20 years, and they get better and better. So maybe
that's
when
my favorite
Tom
franchise
Cruise,
of his for sure.
That. Well,
yeah, I would.
Does he? He doesn't have a lot of
one?
franchises, does he?
Yeah.
I mean, Top Gun, I guess. Now,
Top Gun might be my favorite franchise now.
But there has to be. What else?
No, I don't think so.
I guess
The Mummy.
Okay.
The Mummy.
I haven't seen The Mummy.
There we go. The Mummy.
Okay, A Few Good Men. I've forgotten about that.
Oh, yeah.
A Few Good Men is another one to think about.
Absolutely.
Last Samurai.
Interview with the Vampire. Rain Man. Great. these are some good ones.
I think
Last Samurai.
I think it's funny, Mark, what you're saying about the Mission Impossible stuff, because so, and this is something I think with Tom Cruise a lot. His movies are so enjoyable that you do typically go to them again. And we talked about how I can't remember if we said this live or if this was just when we were starting up, but just how he doesn't often make a lot of money when the movies are released. And I think it's because
word of mouth, maybe.
I think a lot of this is just we had a lot of these on VHS growing up, and we had the first Mission Impossible, and I've seen that movie so many times, and I love it every single time it's referenced in another movie. That never gets old to me. I think that's just so fun, and I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of the other Mission Impossible movies growing up, so it was just that was the only one, and it's only recently that I've seen a lot of the newer ones, and they are very good, but there's just something about that first one that I don't know, just those scenes and even though they've definitely upped the ante in recent ones and they've made it more complex and more interesting. I love that first one so much.
Yeah,
that one's probably the Tom Cruise movie in my head.
Yeah. Which is interesting because it came out the same year as Jerry Maguire, and there are probably people out there that would say Jerry Maguire is Tom Cruise. That's. But it's, definitely he's kind of he's an action star in a lot of ways, and Jerry Maguire's not really an action movie. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's got a lot of memorable lines in that, and that movie is very quotable.
Okay, so I buzzed through his IMDb page, and it's crazy because I totally didn't think this was the case, but until Top Gun Maverick, and also we've got a rumored sequel to Live, Die, Repeat.
Mm-hmm. Formerly known as Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, Live, Die, Repeat, and Repeat is what it says on there.
Right. No, that's Mission Impossible is his only established franchise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it also reminded me of Cocktail, which is certainly a candidate for my favorite Tom Cruise movie.
Well,
that's a joke. That's a joke.
No, I know, but I haven't seen Cocktail, but I have seen Iron Man, and Tom Cruise was either considered or offered the role. I think he was offered the role and he turned it down. And he's never done. That's interesting. He's never gotten into any of the big franchises, like the superhero.
Isn't that such a Maverick thing? He wants to still be captain. He just wants to be doing his little action movies.
Right. Yeah. It is kind of, huh? Yeah.
There we go.
Rain Man's another one that I think is a great movie, and he is. I know that Dustin Hoffman gets all the praise for his performance, and I think he might have won the Oscar, because he plays Savant, Kim Peeks, based on Kim Peeks, I believe. But Tom Cruise is great. He has to go through such a transformation in that movie too, right? He's the one that he's kind of the selfish, arrogant, and brother that has to kind of learn to set aside his own worldly interests and take care of his brother, and he's got a lot of. It's a good movie. I really liked Rain Man.
Did either of you guys see Tropic Thunder?
Yes.
Because he just has a supporting role in that movie under heavy latex,
right?
Borderline unrecognizable. But as far as a performance that is not just Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise, that's an example.
He's funny in that. That was really playing against type, right?
Yeah.
Cover yourself in heavy makeup, just swear like crazy, scream and shout, and I think they even made him bald. Yeah, he danced, and then they made him bald.
Because there's a dance scene at the end.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, because was it Christopher Walken? Because I keep hearing about these little things where Christopher Walken always tries to find a way to dance in his movies, and Tom Cruise always tries to find a way to ride a motorcycle. And you know, and you were talking about like Kaczynski always has some kind of a flying element to his movies or
Right.
something, right? So I didn't know if
People have their signatures.
Yeah, but I thought there was something significant to the fact that Tom Cruise was dancing in Tropic Thunder, but I can't remember exactly what it might have been.
I don't know. Have you ever seen Magnolia?
No.
Oh.
So I know that one of them is a Cameron Crowe movie, and the other one is it Paul
Vanilla
Thomas
Sky.
Anderson?
Yeah, Vanilla Sky is Cameron Crowe. Paul Thomas Anderson did Magnolia.
Yeah. Well, and Jerry Maguire is Cameron
that's
Crowe.
Cameron Crowe.
Yeah, which I've seen. I have not seen Vanilla Sky, but because I know that because there are these two movies that kind of came out around 2000, give or take, and I have not seen either one of them.
Yeah, I haven't seen Vanilla Sky.
But I do hear them referred to periodically.
Yeah, Magnolia is interesting because it's one of the first movies where he's not, because he was such a star for so long, starting with Top Gun, and it's an ensemble piece, so it has a huge cast of characters, and they're brought together through family relations and stuff, but mainly through themes. Like the movie is about, for example, estrangement between fathers and children, and how it happens and kind of affects through different generations or different characters in the movie. And he plays this kind of really damaged but highly successful seduction expert who like sells these tapes that teach guys how to seduce women. And he's just horrible, very misogynistic, very just filthy. And there's a scene where he has to confront his father who's dying, and I've heard that it's very personal to him because he has a bad relationship with his own father in real life. Tom Cruise does. So it's a hard to watch scene because it's like his father in the movie is dying, and he's basically like pouring out all of his emotions on his deathbed, and you see this vulnerability for the first time in the movie of this, like I said, he plays a seduction expert that's kind of semi-famous or maybe infamous in the movie.
Right.
And it's a very unusual turn for Tom Cruise. I think when it came out, in fact, it was the same year as Eyes Wide Shut, which I haven't seen, but it's he started to get away from his more traditional, like, leading man type roles, more clean cut with a little bit of an edge or a little bit of a Maverick side of him. But it's a really great movie.
So I have a specific question for each one of you, and I want to ask the one to Danny first.
Okay.
So when you were introduced to Tom Cruise, either formally or informally. Now I apologize if you already kind of referenced this when you're talking about like the original, being a fan of the original Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Did his off-screen persona / antics, did that factor into your first impression? Like, has that colored your impression of him at all?
Not at all, because I feel like a lot of that stuff was going down when I wasn't following celebrities.
Okay.
Because like that was like early 2000s. It's kind of
like mid 2000s.
Yeah. When he's like jumping up on the couch and then by the time I saw those old clips, I already kind of had it in my head that celebrities were crazy.
Okay.
And so all the Scientology stuff, I'm just yeah, go figure. It's never affected me, I don't think.
And the reason I ask is because, to even a higher degree, I think that this is an interesting thing to consider with somebody like Michael Jackson, because his persona, his public persona, changed so dramatically over, and Mark, I don't know if you can echo this or not, but I have very clear and vivid memories of the Thriller era with Michael Jackson when he was just this incredible performer. And even if you listen to oldies all the time, you still knew everything about, Thriller and Billie Jean and all this stuff. And all of the controversy so completely derailed that I just feel like anybody kind of born after a certain year has no idea what that guy was. And because it was so eclipsed by all the eccentricities and all of the legal issues and the controversy and all this. And to the point where I remember shortly before his death, a documentary came out that I believe was called This Is It, that was about him preparing for a new tour, and mostly concentrated on kind of like preparing the dance performance, the stage show. And you watch that, and it's kind of like you just suddenly remember, oh yeah, this is why he's famous. That's why we know this guy. This is why he's such a big deal, is because he's, because you had so forgotten everything, all of the kind of the good stuff. And so I kind of wonder if, depending on when you come into somebody's career, like, to a lesser degree with Tom Cruise, right? Like, cause if you were just kind of coming of age when he's jumping up on Oprah's couch, you're not thinking of Maverick, right? You're not thinking of Interview with the Vampire and Mission Impossible. You're thinking, oh, this is that guy who's like really into Scientology and saying nasty things about people who go to psychiatrists, and and so my question, that's my question for Danny.
That's very interesting. Yeah,
but then my question for Mark, which is related, is, do you think he has officially emerged past that, or do you think there are still a lot of people who just kind of, subconsciously roll their eyes and it's like, oh, Tom Cruise, yeah, he's,
I think my response answers that a little.
Yeah, I think he's such a big star that he's earned, like, he has enough good credit to outweigh the bad credit. And also the fact that he's been smart enough to not do wildly inappropriate or weird things in public for like 14 or 15 years now has helped. Because I guess the Matt Lauer thing, where he made fun of psychiatry and got really mad at Matt Lauer, and the couch jumping thing, they weren't that far apart, if I remember. They were like within 2 or 3 years.
They were all kind of the same period.
So it feels like a phase.
And then also his marriage and divorce from Katie Holmes, where apparently she was harassed and bothered by Scientology members, and he has a kind of almost an unhealthily close relationship with David Miscavige, who's sort of like the head of Scientology and has been for decades. And so there's a lot I've read about that is just, it's unpleasant, and I kind of assume it's true, but I just don't I don't let it really affect Tom Cruise, the movie star, in my view, in my mind. Like, he still makes great movies. It's just like how a lot of my favorite bands, like, I disagree with them politically, but I don't care enough to like not listen to their music or even go to their concerts.
Because otherwise there would be nobody left.
Right. That's my whole point, right? I don't have the fortitude, like I'm not principled enough to just avoid like watching movies and listening to music, if I really, because I just love it too much. And I'm going to go see Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 probably the first week or two it comes out, next year.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really affect me, and it seems to me like, based on how this Top Gun movie is doing with a $156 million opening over Memorial Day weekend, people are just, they love him.
No, I agree. I think that it's moved past that, but it seemed like such a significant thing that I've wondered. If people do still kind of have that in the back of their mind, but and I don't know. I mean, because I certainly don't excuse any improprieties or inconsiderate stereotypes and opinions and stuff like that. But the thing that I keep coming back to is that for all of the weirdness of which is really just kind of standard in Hollywood anyway.
Yeah.
The thing I keep coming back to is that this guy, it's hard to think of someone who is more perfectly tailored to his job than an adrenaline junkie who is just obsessed with giving the audience the craziest, most authentic, over-the-top visual cinematic experience possible. And, it obviously has kind of a corny tinge to it, but like, I just appreciate what the guy does to entertain me. You know,
Yeah.
the way that, and I mean, it's like I say, it's conveniently enough, it ties into his personal adrenaline junkie personality.
Yeah.
But, you know, I do enjoy being the beneficiary of that, even if one day it does wind up going horribly wrong.
Right.
And I don't know that,
and also
maybe he's okay with that. Maybe he's come to grips with that.
Yeah. And kind of going back to like what you mentioned with Michael Jackson, like, I mean, comparing the two, if what you hear about Michael Jackson is true versus like what we hear or know about Tom Cruise being true, I mean, Michael Jackson, it was much, much worse. You know, like that's almost unforgivable. And yet I remember going with my wife and seeing This Is It in the theater. And it was with a tinge of sadness because it was right after he died. But it was a great documentary, and it's just about the music and the concert preparation. I mean, that really the whole documentary, and it's almost from the point of view of, well, not some of it is from the point of view of the dancers and the people who are like in the show with him, and how that's just they're so excited to do it, and it's like the opportunity of a lifetime. And it's all about him choreography, you know, doing the choreography and telling people where to go, and then you see him doing some rehearsals, and it's really good. Like, it sounds like it would be boring, and it just wasn't. It wasn't boring at all for us, you know?
Not at all.
But then everything you hear about with the, after the release of Finding Neverland, I mean, it's just icky, you know? And so that definitely colors my opinion of Michael Jackson, but it was more, at least it was solidified more after his death than it was before. You know.
And I think also like the music lives on, right? And so there's sort of, you know, Tom Cruise, the person, but there's also Tom Cruise, like the actor and his work, just like there's Michael Jackson, the artist, right? And so I think that's the thing for me. It's like, do I think that I would want to have a personal relationship with Tom Cruise? Probably not. But that's the same case for like all celebrities. Like, I don't think there's really a celebrity I'd want to be close with, minus like a couple where it's like, oh, you know, they seem like a cool person, right? But but you know, I love movies. I love their work. I love what they're able to do. So I think that's kind of what it comes down to for Tom Cruise.
Well, I think it's a question we all have to reconcile at some point. If you're a fan of movies, if you're a fan of the arts, I think you eventually, you know, or let me put it this way. If you're enough of a fan that you are the kind of person who gravitates toward or just learns about or is interested in the artists themselves, you eventually come to that point where you're going to have to say, okay, is there a problem with me enjoying this person's work in spite of what I know about their personal life, their personal opinions, their behaviors, you know, whatever. And so, not the subject I expected to finish on, but here we are. Any final thoughts or statements or feelings about Maverick or Tom Cruise or anything we've covered?
Just go see it in the theater. This is a perfect example of a movie that should be seen in a theater. Biggest screen, best sound 100%. You can get.
Yep. No, I'm glad you pointed that out, because that really was one of the big takeaways that I had, was that, you know, this one absolutely worth the first run, prime time, IMAX, you know, the premium. Get yourself a nice recliner chair and live it up, because this is a special movie.
Yep.
Okay, guys. Well, thanks. So this has been Danny Hatch and Mark LaRocco and myself, Josh Terry. This has been the Utah FilmPod. Thank you for spending time with us. And by all means, subscribe to our podcast. Leave comments on the episodes that are already out there. We'd love to hear from you. We look forward to giving you more material soon. And until then, have yourself an excellent beginning of the summer.